Welcome back, listener. I'm your host, Carrion, and tonight we have a tale of fatherly love in the apocalypse. Story by Shane Sellers and voice acting by Daniel. I present Father.
The world had turned into a desolate wasteland, a place where the sun rarely pierced the thick clouds of ash and dust. As I crouched in the darkness, peering through a dusty window pane, my heart pounded in my chest like a wild thing, my fingers trembling with fear. Outside, the world had turned into a desolate wasteland, a place where the sun rarely pierced the thick clouds of ash and dust. As I crouched in the darkness, peering through a dusty window pane, my heart pounded in my chest like a wild thing, my fingers trembling with fear. Outside, the world had unraveled into something unimaginable. Something straight out of a nightmare. My father, once a pillar of strength and resilience, now sat on the rickety porch, a frail and haggard figure. His face, gaunt and ashen, bore the weight of an unspoken dread. His clothes hung in tatters, and his hands trembled uncontrollably. Something was consuming him from within, and I couldn't comprehend the terror that gripped my heart. "Father," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. "Are you all right?" He turned to me, his eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and resignation.
"I don't know, son. This world, it's changing all of us. I'm scared I won't be able to protect you and your mother."
My mother, a steadfast presence, was busy tending to my little sister, Emma. Her once vibrant eyes now carried a perpetual look of concern and determination. She held Emma close, shielding her from the harsh realities of this grim world, even as the world outside continued to unravel. "Mom," I said, approaching her as she rocked Emma gently. "How are you holding up?" She smiled weakly, her eyes filled with a mother's love and concern. "We'll get through this, sweetheart. Your father and I will make sure of it. We have to stay strong for Emma." My father's mutated hand reached out to touch my mother's shoulder, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of love and sorrow. "Doug, we're in this together. No matter what happens, we'll face it as a family." My father's voice, now a guttural rasp, croaked out.
"I'm scared, Susan. I don't want to hurt any of you."
She placed her hand gently on his mutated arm, and for a moment, they shared a connection that transcended the physical deformities that had befallen him. "We'll find a way to help you, Doug. We won't give up." Frank, our neighbor, and an old veteran with a hat adorned in medals, came by one evening. He brought a bag of candy for me and my sister, asking my mother to speak in private with my father. Both he and my father sat on our rickety porch. He spoke in hushed tones, his voice carrying a sense of authority and wisdom that had always put people at ease, even in these dire times.
"Doug,"
Frank said, his voice laden with concern.
"I know this ain't easy, but we gotta do something. Them cannibals are getting closer every day. We can't just sit here and hope for the best."
My father's tired, haunted eyes met Frank's gaze.
"I don't know what to do, Frank. Everything's falling apart, and I can't protect my family like this. I'm changing, and I'm scared I won't be able to control it."
Frank placed a comforting hand on my father's shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie and solidarity.
"We'll figure it out together, Doug. We'll find a safe place, get supplies, and make sure your family's okay. You're not alone in this, buddy."
As the days wore on, my father's transformation progressed, the relentless mutation altering him beyond recognition. It started with subtle signs, like the ashy pallor of his skin and the odd twitching of his fingers. Soon, patches of scales began to emerge on his arms, their texture grotesque and otherworldly. His hands, once strong and capable, now had elongated fingers with sharp claws that twitched involuntarily. In the midst of this chaos, we found shelter one night in an abandoned building. Our makeshift family huddled together, seeking solace in each other's company. But fate had one more cruel twist to deliver. Frank, our steadfast guide and protector, suffered a sudden and merciless heart attack. It happened in the blink of an eye, and there was nothing any of us could do. The loss of our friend left an unbearable void in our hearts, and it felt as though the world had grown even colder and bleaker without his steady presence. My mother, with tears streaming down her face, tenderly closed his eyes and whispered a prayer for his soul. We buried him with his medals, adorning a makeshift cross, a solemn tribute to the man who had been our guide and protector in a world that had lost its way. The wind whispered its mournful lament as we said our final goodbye, and the memory of Frank's selfless sacrifice would forever be etched in our hearts. Our journey took us through the war-torn remnants of Charlotte, a city reduced to ruins. Desperate survivors clashed over meager resources, and the ceaseless cacophony of violence haunted our every step. The streets were a chaotic battleground, where once majestic buildings now lay in shattered disarray, their skeletal frames bearing witness to the brutality of humanity's descent into madness. Amidst the wreckage, we scrounged for supplies, our footsteps echoing through the eerie silence of the urban graveyard. The air was heavy with the acrid scent of burning buildings, and the distant sound of gunfire served as a grim reminder that danger lurked around every corner. One evening, we managed to scavenge some meager rations, and we gathered around a makeshift table to share a meager meal. My father, attempting to join us, elicited concerned glances between my mother and me. His grotesque transformation had left us shaken, and we couldn't hide our fear. His colossal eye brimmed with tears, wounded by our fear and rejection, and he withdrew to a corner where he wept silently. Our journey continued, the road stretching ahead like an endless abyss. It was on one fateful day that we encountered a preacher, a man of unwavering faith who saw something in my father that we struggled to comprehend. He was a tall man with a long, unkempt beard that seemed to reach down to his chest. His tattered robe billowed around him like a shroud, and his piercing eyes held a deep, unwavering resolve. With a voice as soothing as the whisper of a gentle breeze, the preacher spoke to my father, reminding him that he had been created in the image of God for a purpose beyond our limited understanding. Those words seemed to bring some measure of solace to my father, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a glimmer of recognition in his monstrous eye. But hope remained a fragile commodity in this cruel new world, and our respite was short-lived. One day, as we traversed a desolate stretch of road, 3 cannibals emerged from the shadows, their depravity and hunger gleaming in their eyes. The wind carried a mournful howl, as if foretelling the impending danger, but we pressed on, oblivious to the horrors that awaited us. The leader of the cannibals, a wiry and weathered man with a wild, matted beard, surveyed our group. His eyes widened as they settled on my father, taking in the grotesque mutations and immense size. He exchanged wary glances with his companions, a sense of trepidation evident in their hushed murmurs. My father, his voice reduced to guttural grunts and growls, attempted to communicate with the cannibals. His monstrous form and the incomprehensible sounds that emanated from him seemed to give the cannibals pause. With a combination of gestures and inarticulate grunts, he urged them to leave our family be, a plea for mercy from a creature caught between 2 worlds. But the cannibals, their hunger and desperation outweighing their caution, launched an attack on our family. Their eyes gleamed with feral hunger as they closed in, driven by an insatiable urge to feast upon the flesh of the living. My mother, Emma, and I watched in helpless horror as the battle unfolded. My father, despite the grotesque mutations that had ravaged his form, summoned a flicker of his former strength and resolve. My mother handed him Frank's shotgun, a symbol of our departed friend's protection and guidance. With a nightmarish display of power, my father fought like a creature possessed. His tentacle-like appendage lashed out, striking with deadly precision, while his strange limbs moved with an otherworldly grace. The air filled with the stench of blood and the sickening crunch of bones as he defended our family with every ounce of strength he could muster. The battle that ensued was enthralling in its brutality, a harrowing dance of survival in a world teetering on the edge of madness. The cannibals, driven by their frenzied hunger, were relentless in their assault. But my father, a monstrosity born of the apocalypse, fought with a ferocity and determination that defied reason. In the end, we managed to escape the clutches of the ravenous cannibals, but the scars of that encounter would haunt our dreams for years to come. As we fled from the scene, my father's monstrous form slowly receded, and his eye, filled with pain and sorrow, met mine. It was a silent acknowledgement that he had done what he could to protect his family, even in the face of his own nightmarish transformation. Finally, our journey led us to the rugged mountains of North Carolina, where we stumbled upon a community of survivors who had managed to retain their humanity in the face of unimaginable horrors. They welcomed us with open arms, offering shelter, safety, and a flicker of hope in this grim landscape. The mountains, with their majestic peaks and pristine wilderness, provided a stark contrast to the desolation we had left behind. Towering evergreens stretched towards the heavens, their branches swaying in the breeze like nature's cathedral. Crystal-clear streams meandered through the valleys, their waters pure and untainted by the chaos of the outside world. As we settled into our newfound home among the mountains, my father's condition continued to deteriorate. Tumors sprouted on his grotesque form, causing him unimaginable pain. His skin, once recognizable as human, now bore a patchwork of scales and pulsating growths, some of which emitted an eerie, bioluminescent glow in the darkness. It was during one agonizing night, as he lay weak and suffering, that he mustered the strength to speak. His voice, a raspy whisper that cut through the silence.
I love you.
He managed to convey, his solitary eye brimming with tears. Tears welled in our eyes as we clung to one another, a family forever changed by the relentless onslaught of a world gone mad. We buried my father, overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains. In the end, amidst the chaos and the mutations, one thing remained immutable: the enduring love of a father for his family, a beacon of humanity in the midst of the abyss. In the embrace of the North Carolina mountains, amidst the beauty of untouched nature, we found a fragile semblance of hope. And as we faced an uncertain future, we clung to the enduring bonds of family, the memories of lost friends, and the knowledge that even the darkest of times, the human spirit could persevere. I loved my father, and I miss him.
This has been a Carrion Creature Feature production. If you enjoyed our post-apocalyptic story, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for more terrifying tales. Until next time.